We all know 420 is the day to get high. But do you know why? Every year on April 20th, cannabis lovers celebrate their favorite plant with festivals, protests, marches, and smokeouts great and small. So what are the origins of this high holiday? And how did it spread? Our story begins in the fall of 1971 in San Rafael, California, when a small group of wisecracking, weed-smoking students known as the Waldos got a hold of a treasure map that supposedly showed the location of a hidden weed garden growing nearby. As the surprisingly well-documented story goes, one of the Waldos had a friend whose brother was in the Coast Guard at the time, stationed at the Point Reyes Lighthouse. For years, this particular Coast Guard cadet had been planting a small patch of pot in a forgotten area of federal land near the remote outpost. But as harvest time drew near this time around, he got paranoid about his commanding officer busting him. So he drew a rough map showing where to search for the plants and gave the Waldos permission to keep it all for themselves if they could find it before the weather turned or the buds rotted. With this treasure map in hand, by pre-arrangement, the Waldos met at 4:20 p.m. on a fateful autumn afternoon under a statue of Louis Pasteur to get high and gather their forces before setting out in search of the secret weed garden. Together, they spent weeks questing after this holy grail, only to come up empty each time. Passing each other on campus, they took to using the phrase Louis 420 as a coded reminder of their meeting time and place whenever a new search party was organized. Eventually, they dropped the Louis, and they never found the weed plants. But 420 took on a life of its own. So how did a silly in-joke become a global phenomenon? The same way high-quality cannabis seeds spread from Northern California to the rest of the country back in those heady days of the early 1970s. By hitching a ride on the Grateful Dead's traveling psychedelic freak show. As one of the Waldos explained to Huffington Post's Ryan Grimm in 2010, the Grateful Dead had this rehearsal hall on Front Street in San Rafael. So we used to go hang out and listen to them play music and get high while they practiced for gigs. There was also a place called Winterland in San Francisco where we'd always get backstage. And when somebody passed us a joint or something, and we'd say, "Hey, 420." So it started spreading through that community. With the Grateful Dead touring incessantly to large crowds over the next 2 decades, the seeds of 420 scattered far and wide, and then began to take root and spread. Not through the mainstream media, which didn't know and wouldn't care, or social media, which didn't even exist yet, but via an early peer-to-peer network known as the Smoke Sesh. Getting high at 4:20 a.m. or p.m. was a true grassroots movement back when that really meant something. A meme before the internet. At first, the phrase 420 also served as a clandestine way for fellow aficionados to self-identify in a time of heavy repression. As cannabis culture came further and further out of the shadows, however, the coded nature of the communication fell by the wayside, and 420 morphed into a day of public celebration. So smoke some loud and be proud, because 420 is not some greeting card marketing ploy, or the pot-smoking St. Patrick's Day. It's a goofy, subversive, counterculture holiday that's all about getting high and having a fun adventure with your friends. To hear the rest of this story, check out the latest episode of Great Moments in Weed History with Abdullah and Bean, available via iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, SoundCloud, or wherever you get podcasts. Were you just gonna go and get high and have a goofy adventure with your friends? If we could just get through this last paragraph.